Good evening. How are you? Good, I hope. I'm doing well. I read something interesting today that I wanted to share with you. Okay? It's based on a blog by Sarah Briggs, and it's entitled 3 Ways Uncluttering Can Help You Accept Yourself. I'm not sure if you like to unclutter, but I know I have a difficult time with that, getting rid of some things, and that's what it's dealing with, uncluttering. Okay? It says, I now see owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we will ever do. Now, this is a quote from Brené Brown. And it says, the process of decluttering does not come easily. You may find yourself attached to seemingly mundane things, such as mugs you never used, dresses that didn't fit, musical instruments you never bothered to learn, and in order to let them go, you may have to dig deep into your own insecurities. Maybe you never thought of that, having an insecurity by cluttering stuff, by keeping stuff. It says, going through our belongings is so much more than simply asking, do I need it? Or does it make me happy? It entails being honest and vulnerable with ourselves, and maybe even a bit uncomfortable. It says, decluttering requires us to work through some of our deepest fears, but if done right, it also gives us the power to cultivate radical self-love. And then it gives us 3 ways that choosing to let go of our clutter can help us find more self-acceptance. Number 1, it says, you make peace with your truest self. It says, there are some things we keep not for who we are, but for who we wish we were. It says, purchases we make to our fantasy self are generally aspirational and reflect the goals and dreams we have for ourselves. And for you, it may look like, maybe you can identify with this, a pair of fancy shoes that you bought thinking you'd wear them out to special occasions. But when those events roll around, you always reach for the same comfortable pair. Or it may be lots of yarn that you swear you'll use when you learn to knit one day, even though you just can't seem to find the time for those crafty hobbies. Okay? Or a collection of classic novels that you just can't seem to get into, even though you want to be the kind of person who can talk about Dickens and Tolstoy when you're at a party. Maybe there's something else for you though, right? Something that you bought that you always fantasized about, that this is what you're going to do. And you bought that item, but you stored it away and you never got to do it. Maybe, right? It says, if there's a disconnect between your fantasy self and your habits, these items are almost guaranteed to become clutter. Worse yet, they become clutter that makes you feel like crap for failing to be who you're not. The fantasy that you wanted to come, that you never realized, right? It says, if you've been feeling guilty about not using your yoga mat or pasta maker, consider this your official permission to let it go. You have my permission to let it go, okay? It doesn't mean that you'll never reach those goals. It just means that you aren't in a place to make them happen yet. And hey, even if you decide that those aren't the right goals for you after all, those fantasies that you had in mind, that's 100% okay too, okay? So you have my permission to let them go, whatever it is that you fantasize about yourself. It doesn't mean that you have to let them go all, but maybe you're just not ready for them yet, okay? All right. It says, decluttering your fantasy self can free you up to be more at peace with your truest, most authentic self, which is way cooler than any pasta maker, right? Right. Okay. So be your authentic self. Fantasy is fantasy. You may get to it yet. But for now, be your authentic self. Okay, that was the first way that we can help declutter and become more acceptable of ourselves. The second way is you learn to trust in your resilience. Have you ever been nervous to get rid of something because you might need it one day in the future? I have. Then you, my friend, might have just in case clutter. Just in case. You might need it one day, right? So you keep it. It says, when our homes are filled with stuff we keep just in case, it tends to be the result of a deep-seated fear of change. Never looked at it that way. Maybe you haven't either. It is our way of trying to be prepared. It is our way of trying to be prepared for any possible scenario that life may throw at us, of trying to gain some semblance of control over every facet of our lives. But life doesn't really work that way, does it? As hard as we try, we can never fully prepare for the infinite number of situations that might happen in our lives. We can't. They just happen, right? So hanging on to that second stapler, just in case the first one might break, is an attempt to control a future situation which may or may never happen. And when you multiply this mentality by hundreds or even thousands of items that we may be keeping, it's easy to see how our fear of the future can impact our homes. Things I've never looked at it that way, in that sense. Have you? Maybe you know a lot more than I do, but I have all these simple things, these little silly things that I still do. It says, decluttering these items can help you release that need for control and trust in your own resilience to overcome obstacles. So if you get rid of that second stapler, and years from now the first one does break, you can ask yourself, is there something else I can use instead? Like a paperclip. Does this document even need to be stapled in the first place? Who in my life has a stapler that I could borrow? Decluttering those just-in-case items can help you sharpen your creative thinking and can even strengthen your bond with the community of friends, family, and neighbors around you. So I never looked at it that way. And I do have 2 staplers. Okay. So what things do you have that you're keeping just in case you may need them in the future and you don't want to let go of them? Think about it. Some of the silly things that we do, right? And then again, some of them, they're important. We think they're important, right? Always being prepared, even though life doesn't work that way. It just happens. And usually we're unprepared, right? Okay, so that was number 2. The third way to decluttering is helping us and be more accepting of ourselves is you find more happiness in the present moment. It says, if you're sentimental, like I am, you probably have an urge to keep anything that has memories associated with it. The issue arises when our homes are filled with clutter from the past, and it prevents us from living fully in the present. And let's be real, living mindfully in the present is probably the key to a happy life. Would you agree? I would. Living in the present is always better than living in the past, right? And it says, so if you're looking to pare down your sentimental clutter, here are some things to keep in mind. There can sometimes be a fine line between fond memories and painful memories. Allow yourself to let go of things that bring up negative emotions or crappy experiences from the past. It says getting rid of an item doesn't mean that you're insensitive or that you don't love the person that it reminds you of. Doesn't mean that at all. You don't need to keep a whole set of items to remember. You can choose a favorite one or 2, and that can serve the same purpose. Not a whole string of things, right? It says if you want to part ways with sentimental items but worry about losing the memory, you can always take a picture of it, right? You don't have to keep all those items. Choose 1 or 2 and then take a picture or get rid of the item, right? Because it says, after all, your memories live in you, inside you. not in the stuff, right? The memories are here and in your heart, not in the stuff that you keep hanging around, right? Right. It says it's natural to feel some attachment to the past, yeah, but it doesn't need to be at the expense of you living in the present. If your home is full of sentimental items, letting go of some of them could be the key to finding more happiness in your space. It says, as we declutter, we inevitably come face to face with our attachment to the past, our fantasy selves, and our future fears. By working through the emotions behind each, we can start to find a little more peace in the present moment and ultimately in ourselves. So what did you think? Was that something good to consider? I thought it was. Because I had this acquaintance one time who was what you call a pack rat, right? He kept everything. He was afraid to get rid of it, to throw it away. And when he went into his apartment, it was like, whoa, why are you keeping all these things? All because I did this and I remember this and I did this. Like, oh my goodness, right? And we don't want to be like that. If we don't need it, get rid of it. If you do want to keep a memory of it, take a picture, but get rid of all the clutter, right? And like it says, you have more space around you for the good things that you want to live in the present for, right? Okay, so I thought that was good to consider. I hope you did too. I hope you don't have too much to declutter. I actually don't have too much. I did it a while back, but I still have some things that I keep that I should get rid of, that I never even thought of as clutter, but really it is, right? So maybe you have some too. So take a look around your house. Take a look in your purse. I have stuff in my purse. I'm like, why am I keeping this, right? Okay. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I found it interesting. And have a good rest of the night. And I'll be back next week on Monday. Have a great weekend, okay? All right. Good night.